Welcome to the Fairview Social Podcast. As always, I really appreciate everyone that has taken the time to listen. This will be the Thanksgiving episode of the Fairview Social Podcast. And I thought about doing it with guests, and I thought about doing, something special on here, but I just wanted to get on here for a few minutes. I won't take up much of your time. And just talk about Thanksgivings of the past days. With my grandfather Gene passing recently, it's just got me in looking at things in retrospect and thinking about my life in the early years. Because once you get married and you have kids and life just gets rolling, it's almost like you forget about what used to happen. And so I was just kind of thinking about it today and thinking about, just our process for the holidays when I was a kid. And it felt like it was all throughout my childhood, which I guess it was. But yeah, I just want to talk about that for a minute and talk about the things that I'm grateful for, the things that I'm thankful for. I just think that we get lost in that kind of stuff. But a good friend of mine, Jimmy, he every year at work, he says, he'll send out an email to the company talking about how Thanksgiving is basically Christmas without the gifts, no pressure of gifts, because in the society that we live in and the day that we live in Christmas time, you just always feel the pressure of getting gifts for people. And, it's a lot of pressure on families. I know for us over the years, not having much money and feeling obligated to get gifts for everybody. And if you take a step back from the situation, you realize that no one really cares if you're getting gifts or not. But, maybe they do. There might be some people that do. But anyway, Thanksgiving's a way to just celebrate being with each other, being thankful for the presence of your friends and family without any kind of obligation, whether it be out front or just in your mind, which I'd say that a lot of times it is just in your head that you have to get a gift for somebody. So I always carried that and thought about it. And I just thought that was a good way to look at things. And unfortunately, these days, if you don't know this already, I'm in the camp of we should not skip over Thanksgiving and go straight to Christmas. A lot of people these days think that as soon as Halloween's over, the Christmas decorations go up. And I'm not opposed to having the Christmas decorations go up, sometime in November. I'm not that hardcore about it, but I do think that we need to pause and celebrate Thanksgiving for what it is and giving thanks to friends and family and all that kind of stuff. So all that to say, I'm thankful for you, the listeners. We started this podcast. There I go again saying we. I started this podcast in March of this year, and here we are in November currently, and we're on nearly 50 episodes, which has been kind of crazy. It's for someone that is so private and quiet about my personal life. Here we are 50 episodes in, and I think that at this point, those of you that don't know me have gotten to know me, and those of you that do know me maybe have learned something new about me. Not that any of that's important, but it's just interesting because I feel like in my mind, I try not to talk about things that bother me to other people because I feel like nobody wants to hear it. Or there's been a lot of times where it's just like, man, I wish we recorded this conversation because some of the funny things that happen, and there's been a lot of funny episodes and, some serious episodes. And I don't know what you guys like more than, I don't know which direction you guys like, but I just try to do a little bit of everything. I have a close knit group of friends um, that we like to laugh and play and talk shit basically. But then also I live a pretty serious life. I'm very serious about my work. I'm very serious about my family, and so I just try to represent all angles of my life on this show. So for those of you that are listening and have stuck with me, I appreciate it. I have no delusions that this podcast is going to go anywhere other than the audience that it's reached as of right now. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. Um, I've said this in multiple shows before that this is kind of a diary for my children because they grew up knowing probably a different version of me. And as I think back to some of these episodes, I don't know that I want them to know some of these other versions of me, but they're adults now. And so it's probably good because I remember when I was younger, I just wanted to know who my dad was because all I knew when I was a kid is that he was an enforcer. And, by the time that he had passed away, I knew that he was just a broken, messed up guy like the rest of us, which is not a weakness. It's definitely a strength to finally learn that about somebody that you know and that you love and that you care about, that they're experiencing the same things that you're experiencing. So anyway, Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving for my family growing up, every holiday when I was growing up was the same thing. So if I do a Christmas episode similar to this, you're probably going to get a similar, if not the same story. And what I mean by that is my mom and dad were together all the way up until I was 15. So this happened from the time I was born until I was 14 or 15. And, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I remember new things and I'll probably say them here, but, I haven't thought about this stuff in years. This is all stuff that's just been kind of, in the back burner of my mind. This is the type of stuff that you have to recall from the back corners of your mind. But ever since I was a kid, there'd be two things that we would do. My grandmother on my mom's side, we called her Gran, and she lived in Donelson in a condo, which she moved there when I was really young because my grandfather had died. He committed suicide in a house that they lived in Leapers Fork, which that's a story for another show. But we would go visit Gran in Donelson first, as always first. I think in retrospect is probably because that's what my mom wanted. We go there first. And then we would get full there. And then we would go over to Meemaw, which some of you that have listened, her name was Unile. And growing up, I called her Meemaw, but I call her Unile because Unile is like an awesome name. So anytime I get to say it, it's I take the opportunity to say it. But we go visit Unile and Dick. Dick was her husband after his real name was Walter, but everybody called him Dick. And that was, she remarried to Dick after her and Granddaddy Gene which we called back then in the day. That's my dad's dad. Unile and Jean got divorced, and she married Dick, and Jean had married someone else. And again, those of you that have listened to this show know that Gene recently passed away, and he was living over here with me, and we kind of took care of him after COVID and when my dad died. So again, those are stories for other episodes. I don't even know that people care about that, but anyway, we go see Gran in Donelson, and then we go see Meemaw/Unile in Antioch. And so we go over to Gran's, and it was funny because Gran's house was like prim and proper. And it's funny because when I think about it, I don't know that, like, I guess I thought my mom and her family was more prim and proper, but no, they're redneck as anyone else. But it was more prim and proper over there. My Uncle Mart would be there, which RIP Uncle Mart. He just passed away recently as well, which that was my mom's brother. And it was very simple. It was me, my two brothers, and my dad and mom. So there's 5 of us, and then my Uncle Mart and Aunt Mary and Gran every year for Thanksgiving, and Christmas was the same. And so we would go over there, and we would probably go over there around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and my mom would help Gran cook, and all that kind of stuff. And then we would have dinner at 4 or 5. I always remember it being dark by then, and remember daylight saving. So probably around 4 or 5, we would have Thanksgiving dinner, and the fine china would be put out. Everything was properly set. And remember, we were a bunch of boys. It was me and my brothers, so we never helped with anything. All we did was play and go do things while my mom and grandmother set everything up, and then my Aunt Mary. And so it was always very simple. We'd sit down, we would eat Thanksgiving dinner. There was good food. Nothing was ever bad. And we would eat, and then we'd be done. Hugs and kisses, and then we'd head off over to Unile's. And Unile's was a different story. It's funny because with Unile's house, it was very, very different. But I have a squirrel moment here where I just thought of this. But we had one of those minivans back in the day. It's probably like a Chrysler or something. One of those that's got the wood strip down the side of it. And then on the inside is like wood paneling a little bit. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. I always sat in the back of the van, like the third row seating on the driver's side. And I'd crack that little window where it like had the little latch where you pull up and then push out. And so the window would go out. Because I always loved fresh air. Even to this day, like I always crack my window. When I was younger, I cracked my window because I smoked. And, smokers know you've always got that crack in your window. But even before, and I don't smoke anymore, but like I always like to have that crack. Because even at night, like I set my little home pod to play ocean sounds or water sounds. It's just like that. And so I guess it's like in my mind, it's peaceful to me. And I'm sure that other people out there can relate to that. But I always remember going from Donelson to Antioch, and I'd have that window cracked open, and I'd just lay my head on the side there and listen to the air, look up at the stars, look at the lights and all the things. And I haven't thought about that in years until just now. But anytime we had a ride, I would do that. So we'd ride over to Unile's house, and now this is a lot different. So like I said a minute ago, prim and proper over at Gran's house, we have a blessing for the food. We would eat dinner. Oh, Gran, thank you so much for these potatoes. Or Aunt Mary, this green bean casserole is wonderful. Thank you so much for this." That type of situation. But when we got to Unile's house, it was completely different. And probably what you've seen as far as I go on this podcast, there's like episodes where it's like completely off the hinges over here, foul, debauchery, all the things. And then like I have these sides of me where it's like, prim and proper and trying to be um, not show my ass, I guess. And so that's just who I am. Joseph made a comment not too long ago that he's like, whenever this person's on your podcast, you don't cuss and you don't do this and you're acting like this. And then when these people are on here, you do this and that. And if I think really deep into it, it's been like that all of my life, because growing up, it's like I had this proper side, and then I had this, kind of let loose, be more yourself side. Not even so much be more yourself, but just kind of, the crazy shit that kind of goes on in your head. It's like it's more acceptable to be like that. And as I've gotten older and become an adult, it's like both of those sides of me have fluctuated in and out. And so I guess it makes sense that's all of these things together are who I am. And so we go over to Unile's house, which my grandmother gave that house to my dad. And then after my dad passed away, Joseph bought the house. So the house is still in the family. And thank God Joseph went through there and remodeled the whole place. And it looks a hell of a lot better now than it ever did. But growing up, this place was like a mansion to me. And it's really not. It's just a 2 or 3 bedrooms, 1 floor, garage, den, and a living room that nobody was ever allowed to go in, which Joseph spends all of his time in that living room. And it's funny because he probably, in his mind, he does that because we were never allowed to go in there as kids. But anyway, we go over to Unile's house, and I know my mom didn't really like it. And my dad was always just like, I don't know, impartial to it. It's just like that's what he grew up with. So he never flinched at it. But like when you're telling a story like this and you're kind of looking back on this time, you're just like, wow, it was kind of crazy. So anyway, we'd park on the road or something because there's so many people there. And we always go in through the garage, which goes into the den, which goes into the kitchen where everything was. And when you're a kid, everything was so big then. There was like all this space. But now it's like, as an adult, it's just like, I don't know how the hell we all fit in there. Because everybody that was in there was like my dad, like there was the 5 of us, and then my dad's brothers, which would be my uncles, and they had 2 or 3 kids, my grandmother, grandfather, and all these other randos there. It's just a lot of people in there, people cycling in and out. My cousins, and then my cousins were all older than us, so they had families, they had wives, or they had wife and kids, and so it's just a lot of people. But as soon as you open that door to the den, what hits you first, and I know Joseph's on the edge of his seat right now if he's listening to this, because he's making sure that I tell you this story right. It just hits you with cigarette smoke, just clouds into your face. And it's just like, you go in and it's like you can't see anything. I remember looking, and like in the den, it's like if you're in the den and you're kind of looking into the kitchen, you just see like this haze of cigarette smoke, just cigarette smoke hanging out in there. Turkey, all the ants like fighting over whose dressing's the best, or stuffing, dressing or stuffing, whose is the best. Mine's the best. Here, hey, Tim, hey, Tim, they call me Tim, try this stuff, try this dressing. Oh, it's better than Aunt Cindy's. You need to try this. Okay, Aunt Kathy, I'll try that. Everybody fighting for like your approval of whose food's better. You go in, cigarette smoke everywhere. You go in, there's like food everywhere. They're all playing cards on the table in between the food, betting money, starting to put up the Christmas tree, which that's kind of the life that I live now. Is like Thanksgiving is usually like Thanksgiving. And then, after the Thanksgiving celebrations, we start, working on the tree and all that kind of stuff. But it's just like, get you a plate. I'll be like, hey, hun, get you a plate, make you a plate. You go in there and you make you a plate, and you're already full from being, eating a couple hours ago over at Gran's house. You make a plate, they're talking shit like, like you would have never heard over at Gran's house. And, my mom's like elbowing my dad, like, hey, you need to tell your family, shut the hell up. Or, I don't want, I guess like my upbringing of the balance of my family is like my mom was always kind of getting on my dad about like, hey, you don't need to say this around the kids. And, I think that I kind of do that now with my kids, but it was just funny. And it's like, I just wanted to be there because I was just in amazement. Of course, I'm like coughing, cigarettes everywhere, just killing you over there. It's just awful. Everybody's got a cigarette hanging out of their mouth and just so much going on, like sensory overload type of stuff. But it was fun and we loved it. We would get lost in it and, the kids running around. It was just a lot of fun. And it was like two different sides of the spectrum all in one day. As I sit here now telling you this and I'm thinking about it, it's just like two different lives coming together. And it was so awkward, but it wasn't awkward back then. It's just awkward in retrospect because it's just what we did. It's like we knew we were going to Gran's in the afternoon time, and it was going to be, we are going to have dinner. And then we will sit in the living room and we will have a conversation. And, it was prim and proper. And then we go over to Meemaw's house and it was just like, hey, anything goes, do whatever the hell you want type situation. And we loved it, And what was awesome about it is we knew that we'd get to do it all over again in about a month when Christmas rolled around. But it was different at Christmas time because there was presents involved. And I'm thinking of all these things that happen at Christmas time, which would probably be enough for an episode that would be funny to tell you guys about. And so I'll save that for then. But Thanksgiving it's never been lost upon me that it's a time to be thankful for the things that we have. Even when I was a kid growing up, I've always been grateful and thankful for what we have because, I always thought about, like, I've always had a soft heart for people that were in need and in desperation. And of course, you hear a lot about that kind of stuff when you're a kid. And it always affected me because, I don't want anybody struggling or anybody in a tough situation and anybody to be without their family and all that kind of stuff. So I always have a heavy heart about that kind of stuff. And so I remember even thinking back then that I loved the time that I got to be with the family and all that kind of stuff. And as you get older, like I said, my parents split up when I was 15. So, that all that stuff happened up until I was about 14 years old. And then it was just, it was over. And I still did those things, but it was like you doing those things as an adult is different than doing things when you're a kid, because it's like all five of us get in the van and we go do the things, and we're doing it as a family. We get home and there's probably many nights where we got home and my mom, like, we all go to bed and like my mom's probably yelling at my dad about all the dumb shit that we would see and hear. And breathing in the cigarette smoke that was just like a cloud. I can't express to you enough like the cloud of cigarette smoke. Everybody had a cigarette in their mouth, but that was my childhood. It was a mix between, I don't want to say the good and the bad, but just the prim and proper, and then and then reality. It feels like it's like the veneer that you put on, and then the reality, because they weren't changing or not doing something for anybody. But yeah, that was what we did for Thanksgiving. And so as I wrap this up, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and be with your family, be with the people that you care about. And I know that we should be like that every day of the year, appreciative of the people around us, but we're not. I'm guilty of it. But we need to at least take these days like Christmas and Thanksgiving and stop for half a second, because we live in such a fast-paced world, to stop and think, you know what? I'm happy that this person is in my life. And usually what we do to show appreciation is we raise a glass, we want to have a drink to somebody, or we want to like, here, let me offer you this plate. We're always full of offerings, and we want to do these things for people. And just accept it. If you're in a situation where somebody invites you to their Thanksgiving and you don't have anything else to do, just do it. Go and do it. You won't regret it. I know that Nikki and I have been a blessing to Eli and his friends and people that are younger that don't have any other family, or they don't have food every day. It's something simple to me that, like, hey, we got food. We're going to eat every day. I mean, even Eli back in the day would take all of the Thanksgiving stuff and he would eat on it for a week. It's like people are in situations like that. But love each other, care about each other, be thankful for each other. Remember that nothing else is as important as those things. And I'm telling myself this as I'm telling you this, because I need that reminder as well. And just remember that there's somebody out there that it would change their life if you even offered to invite them to Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm thankful for all of you guys. I'm thankful for this podcast. It's been a good outlet for me. Just be with each other, and happy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you in the month of December. And that's it. See y'all.